Eugene approaches witchcraft and thinks to what Robarian told him, that his magic felt like that of a child's after he read it. It is true that it's outside the scope of known and common magic. Eugene asks if she wouldn't happen to know where Senya retired to, but she confirms that she indeed doesn't, as her retirement was so discreet. Her students, mansion servants, and even she don't know a thing about her whereabouts. Even then, the King of Aroth and multiple magic tower masters and mages interrogated her extensively about Senya. But even when she told them she didn't know a thing, they refused to believe her. Those useless bastards started to get into witchcraft to try and go through her memories. But their skills must be quite lacking, as once every few decades, they come to check again, like something would change. Eugene thinks that looking through her memories isn't just to find Senya's location, as however much the mages venerated and respected Senya, with such a material in front of them, perfect for experimenting, any mage would dissect it, to find out what makes it tick. Eugene says that he heard the only public witchcraft in Acreon is the high one, so are the other two here as well. Mare explains that this one's definitely the original. However, Senya extracted the intermediated and low ones from that original, and donated it, with only the high part left over, to Acreon. Mare finds his curiosity about Senya quite interesting, and Eugene asks why he wouldn't be. Mare notes that while this is true, he's not even a traditional mage, as he's from the Lionheart family. So this is her first time seeing one of Vermouth's descendants, and he has her quite intrigued. From what she knows, Senya, after returning to Aeroth, didn't meet with the Lionheart family a single time, not with Vermouth either. Eugene thinks that according to Lionheart's written records, Vermouth didn't meet with his old friends ever again, after returning from Helmud. Senya, Anise, and Moron met up again just once, because of Vermouth's death. Even if Vermouth wasn't really the sociable type, the fact that they didn't meet at all after leaving Helmud and establishing the Lionheart family is quite weird to say the least. He asks Mare if Senya ever spoke about her companions, and she explains that she called Moron a dumbass, and Anise a snake. Eugene sheepishly asks what she said about Hamel, and Mare starts numbering off a bunch of very hard swears, which Eugene finds as quite inelegant for such a refined lady. Mare notes that an elegant lady can still swear from time to time, but whenever Senya spoke of her companions, she looked like she was going to cry, especially when she talked about Hamel. That made her suffer the most. Eugene asks what she said when she talked about Vermouth, and Mare notes that when she did talk about him, she didn't praise, judge, or insult him in the slightest. Eugene stares at a portrait of Senya and thinks that it's the same one as in the mansion. Mare notes that the smile in this portrait is fake, as she never once smiled like that, not a single time. When she had conversations with her to replicate her personality, she asked about it once, about why she's faking the smile in her portrait when she's quite sad. Senya explained that it's better to leave behind a smiling face, rather than sad face, when people are going to see it for generations. Mare says that she can't leave Acreon, and she never has, so she hasn't seen it herself. But she knows a similar portrait stands in Senya's mansion. In this particular portrait, the smile was painted by the artist without her asking for it, which she didn't really like, but what she said was true. It's better to leave a smiling face behind. Eugene feels sorry for her and tries to pat her on the head, but she slaps his hand away and notes that he shouldn't cross the line, as she's been alive for 200 years, so she doesn't want to be treated like a child. Mare continues to guide him through Senya's hall and shows him the magic equipment she used and her favorite staff, Acacia. Eugene recognizes it instantly, and Mare notes that she knew he would recognize it. There's a fairy tree said to only grow in the Great Samar Forest, the homeland of the elves. Acacia is the world's most powerful known magic staff, made from the roots of the 1,000-year-old tree in the center of the elf forest. The elves strongly believe that the tree holds the spirits of their predecessors, and that it's holding up the whole world. Does he really understand that those might elves cut one of the tree's roots to make Senya a gift? Eugene thinks that Senya is human, through and through, but she was involved with elves quite a bit. Senya didn't know who her parents were, as she was abandoned in the Samar Forest, a great jungle in the southern region of the continent. An elf who just happened to be passing by heard her cry and raised Senya. That is how she came to grow up in the elves' dominion. At first, they weren't that fond of her, but when they realized she possessed great talent, they recognized her as one of their own, and taught her elven magic. Mare explains that Senya is the only person to own a staff made from the tree's roots, but that's not all. as the red jewel at the end of the staff is a dragon heart. As far as they know, there are only 2 magic staves in the world that used a dragon heart as an ingredient. Senya's staff, Acacia, and Eugene finished her sentence. Blood Mary. The person who is currently holding Blood Mary is one of the 3 dark mages singed with the demon king of incarceration, Count Edmund, Codreth of Helmud. 300 years ago, the staff's owner was a lich by the name of Belial, a direct subordinate of the demon king, and the one who killed him. The demon king of incarceration was extremely difficult to fight compared to the other demon kings, and all the demons there were so strong, they could be compared to the demon kings themselves. But 3 of them were especially strong: the dagger, shield, and staff of incarceration. When he defeated the shield of incarceration, he sustained a mortal injury, and by the time the fight with Belial was over, he found himself with a large hole in his chest. He asks if he can hold the staff, and Mare allows him, but also notes that he won't be able to cast magic with it, as Acacia only recognizes Senya as its owner. Eugene picks it up and tries to power his mana into it, but the staff denies it outright. He thought that, just maybe, he'd be recognized by Acacia due to Senya's apparition. That sly woman should have left him this staff, instead of some necklace. Mare notes that he really must like Senya, and he says that liking her is not what he would call this. Mare notes that he's lying, as his eyes shine whenever he speaks about her, and he's very focused when looking at her things. Eugene explains that he just likes old stories and the artifacts that come with them. Mare says that if he liked that, he will certainly like this book. She walks towards the library and pulls out a book, and gives it to him. Warrior Vermouth's Great Adventures. She explains that this picture book is the first one to tell the world about Vermouth and his legend. Eugene notes that he doesn't like that book one bit, as he likes Hamel the best and respects him the most. But in this book, he's made to seem like he was just luggage for the party, a useless member. Mare notes that this book is the original version, and it's different than the versions out today, as it was published 300 years ago, though nobody knows who the author really is. Eugene takes the book, but it's even worse than in the recent ones, as it tells of him as an idiot who challenged Vermouth countless times but face-planted every time. Eugene thinks that he did in fact face-plant a couple of times, but he did manage to touch him more than once. Is this book written by that snake, Anise? Mare says that if he likes Hamel so much, he might like what she will show him next quite a bit. They walk throughout the hall and arrive at what seem to be holograms of the party, which surprises Eugene quite a bit. Mare explains that these are memories that Senya extracted and left here personally. They are not like the portraits, but real memories of Senya's colleagues. The handsome man standing in the middle is the great Vermouth. Next to him, the woman who's smiling so much one can't see her eyes, is Anise the Faithful. The one who would rather be considered a troll than a human is Moron the Brave, and the one who looks like a real troublemaker is Hamel, the Foolish. Even though this is common, not a single memory of Hamel's life was left behind, and one can only see Hamel's appearance in this very hall. Eugene notes that he's quite dashing, Hamel that is. Mare asks if there's something wrong with his head, and Eugene explains that Hamel has the charm of a wild beast, a comment which makes him die inside a bit, and Mare to be left speechless. They sit at a table while Eugene is reading a book, and he says that the traces of Senya that have been preserved are on floors 12 to 14, so what's on the top floor? Mare explains that the 13th floor contains research and memoirs of Senya's plans when she was creating Acreon, something that he won't be able to understand right now. The 14th floor also has magic books that contain extensive research, and they would also be quite difficult to understand. But since they all have explanations, they would be a much better choice than the research notes. Eugene asks if these would be better than reading witchcraft, and she notes that it's quite hard to put into words, so it would be much better if he had a go at reading it himself. They arrive at witchcraft, and she explains that it's a method of optimizing mana from a circle, and with that, his magic power will be amplified. A simplification of the technique, for maximum effect, is omission of chanting. Basically, materializing magic through a separation of consciousness. As when unconscious, magic that enters the body is stored, and can be manifested differently, depending on the given situation. The most wonderful thing about all of this is the perfect drive of circle. Although most mages circle these days, the method of circle magic in witchcraft is far superior than a normal circle, so it will be easier for him to just think of it as using the maximum amount of mana to create the strongest power possible. Eugene, much like myself, didn't understand a word of what she just said. But she expected this, as if he understood just from listening. Witchcraft wouldn't be the greatest book ever, right? Eugene asks what he can do to read this hyped-up book, and she notes that he should close his eyes and open his hand, then inject his mana into witchcraft, and he will be able to read it. Eugene does so, but is confused. Does he have to pour mana into it? Or apply mana to the circle, like when he uses magic? Suddenly, he feels that his mind has been transported elsewhere,